Hi, this is Imre Galambos, Professor of Chinese at Cambridge. This video is about a commonly asked question: how on earth is it possible to memorize the tens of thousands of Chinese characters used for writing Chinese in daily life? This is a seemingly daunting task that somehow almost every Chinese person manages to accomplish, which tells us that this is not a superhuman feat, but is actually a task that can be done. Sure, it's not effortless and it doesn't happen in a week's time, but nevertheless, it's entirely doable. And to understand how this is possible, we need to look at 5 myths surrounding Chinese characters. If this is something you're interested in, please stick around. Anyone learning the Chinese language is faced with the intimidating task of having to learn Chinese characters. Unless you're learning the language only by speaking, there's really no way of avoiding having to learn Chinese characters. They are just part of the package. And they keep coming at you. They never seem to end. In every lesson, there is a long list of new characters you have to learn to be able to read that lesson's text. Even if you manage learning them, you know that the next lesson will present another list of new characters. And so this process never seems to end. Sometimes it seems that learning so many new signs is impossible, or that it requires some sort of special talent. Yet all literate Chinese people were able to do this. And they're completely happy to use Chinese characters in their daily life. Not only for work, but also for entertainment and for play. And the reason for this is simply that Chinese characters work for them. To understand how it's possible to learn so many signs, we need to address 5 commonly held misconceptions or myths. The first and most important one is that there are tens of thousands of Chinese characters, which is simply not the case. Although large dictionaries do contain tens of thousands of characters, these are mostly historical variants no longer in use. By contrast, the actual number of characters people use in their daily life is around 3,000 to 6,000, depending on their level of education. Basically, if you're a foreigner learning Chinese, 3,000 characters should do the trick. So forget about the tens of thousands of characters listed in large dictionaries and focus on the 3,000 common ones, which is still a lot, but also a lot more manageable. Myth number 2 is that these are largely random signs. And it is true that until you begin learning them, you may not realize that there are patterns in the structure of characters. And so lots of characters are related to each other. They're not random at all. Most of them consist of components which are not only characters in their own right, but also signify the word's meaning or pronunciation. So while the first 50 characters you learn may seem random, they also begin to teach you the inner structure and pattern of the script. And so the more of them you learn, the easier it becomes to learn new ones. This is completely different from learning 3,000 random signs. We all know these experiments in which chess masters can remember the position of every single figure on the chessboard just by glancing on the board. But this only works if this is a real chess position, like a snapshot of a real chess game. If the figures are arranged on the chessboard randomly, the chess master will be no better in memorizing their position than the average person. Chinese characters are also like this. They have patterns. Their structure has order. And the characters are related to each other, which is the result of them sharing components and being part of other characters. And this interconnectivity makes much easier to memorize them. So they are not random at all. Myth number 3 is that every character is a word, and that each word is a character. At the beginning of their history, each Chinese character, with a few exceptions, denoted a word. So you would write the word for water like this. But in any language, words can be joined into compound words or phrases to denote new concepts. What counts as a word is, of course, not always straightforward. It may differ according to language. So motorboat in English is more like a phrase, hence it's written as 2 words. But motorcycle is 1 word, even though it has the exact same structure as motorboat. But even motorboat becomes 1 word in German or a number of other languages. The point is that such compound words are also very common in Chinese, such as the word 学问, literally meaning study plus ask, but as a word it means learning. Or another word, 弟子, literally younger brother plus son, and as a word it means disciple. These words are already present in text from before the Common Era, so they have a very, very long history. But such words are especially common in modern Chinese, where you also have a large number of much newer words, such as internet cafe, 网吧, or republic, 共和国, user, 用户, utility costs, 水电费. Most words in the modern language are of this compound nature, and for the language user, that means that maybe they're able to use 10 characters to write about 100 words. So in these kinds of arithmetics, the cards are stacked in your favor. Myth number 4 is that you need to be able to learn all Chinese characters before you can read. As in any language, some of the words are much more common than others. And so when you write them, that means that some of the characters are much more common than others. So the word that means place or earth is understandably much more common than the word that means hemorrhoids. And the word meaning place or earth is also much more common in combinations than the word hemorrhoids, which has a much more restricted use. In fact, the first 500 characters make up 90 to 95% of all texts. That means that you can focus on the most used characters to make real progress. And after that, you enter a curve of diminishing returns, which means that you need to do a lot more, in a sense, to accomplish much less. Fortunately, by that time, learning new characters will be much easier for you because you have understood the internal patterns of their structure. This is similar to how Chinese children learn characters. Every year they learn more characters, but even after the first 2 years, they're able to read. Sure, they may stumble upon unknown characters, but most of these will not prevent them from understanding the meaning of the text. And with time, as they learn more and more characters, the unknown ones will be fewer and fewer. Myth number 5 is that you need to be able to both read and write Chinese characters. If you're taking a formal course at a university, then this is of course true, because you're required to be able to write out Chinese characters by hand. But in practical terms, this is not the case at all, because you will be typing most of your characters or using an input method. And even if you don't remember how exactly a Chinese character is written, your input method will handle this without a hiccup. You will always be better at reading characters than writing them. So although in the long run you want to learn how to write Chinese characters by hand without outside aid, you will be able to read them much sooner, which allows you to use them way before you actually learn to write them by hand. So these are the 5 myths commonly held by those wanting to learn Chinese characters, and then because of this, maybe deciding not to do that. So as you can see, learning the characters is actually not that scary. It is entirely possible. Make no mistake, however, learning them takes time. You cannot binge learn 3,000 signs overnight. No matter how well you understand their internal structure, you still need time to learn them and to become familiar with them. Okay, so this is how it's possible to memorize the thousands of Chinese characters. Let me know if you have any questions or whether there are related topics you want me to talk about. Thank you for watching and see you next time.